I'm hoping to gain some insight from you kind internet strangers about whether I should enter back into the relationship that I have with my wife. We are both in our late 20s. A huge factor at play is the fact that we have a 2-year-old son. We've been together for 10 years and married for 7. Here's the story. My wife works in an environment where she cares for people with mental incapacities. In October, one of the residents of the home she works in got sick and was admitted to the hospital, where she ultimately passed away. The regulations surrounding the clients and residents of the home state that a staff member of the home has to stay with the resident during the hospital stay at all times, since they are the ones that are familiar with the residents, their cues, their tics, etc. Shortly after the resident was admitted, I noticed that my wife was calling her coworkers to switch her shifts so that she could be at the hospital more often with the dying residents. I remember admiring her so much for this, thinking she really cared about this woman and wanted to see her through her final days. What a gal. Then I started noticing that she was getting a lot more dressed up to go to work. I'm talking almost to the nines, full makeup, low-cut tops, etc. This was a bit of a red flag to me. But I didn't think much of it since she had given me no signs of being unhappy or anything of the sort. Instead, I started to tease her about it. Wow, who are you getting dressed up for? Looking good. Whoever gets to have you around all night is lucky. Things like this to judge her reaction. Her reaction was very negative. She became very defensive about these things to the point where she would storm out of the house on her way to work, calling me an insecure asshole, etc. Over a short amount of time, I became more and more aware of the red flags that were popping up around me. The sex started getting different, for example. No decrease in frequency, but something was off. I tried talking to her about it, but didn't really get anywhere. I started noticing how much she was guarding her cell phone. She started keeping it in her bra instead of in her pocket, for example. If it wasn't in her bra, it was on the arm of the chair she was sitting in. And if I came near her to bring her a glass of water, for example, she placed her hand over it as it got closer, or pulled it in closer. That was the biggest red flag, and when I became absolutely certain that something was up. She also started spending a lot more time on the phone, texting in general, and in our bathroom with her phone for extended periods of time. So, I hammered her some more for more information. I asked her if I was right to be assuming there was someone else in the picture. Finally, she broke down. She admitted that while she was caring for the resident in the hospital, she met a male nurse and began flirting back and forth. She said she had been acting so weird and getting so snippy because she felt horrible about flirting with this man. She told me that she eventually told him that she was married with a child at home, and he looked at her like she was disgusting. And that was it. Nothing else was going on. By this time, the resident had passed away, and she wasn't going to the hospital for work anymore. I laughed and I hugged her. I asked her if she felt like she cheated on me, and she said yes, that's why things had been off. I assured her that I wasn't upset. People flirt with each other all the time, and it's not a big deal. Not that I was okay with it, just that it wasn't something to overly fret about. And now, since she was done working at the hospital, it wasn't even a concern anymore. So, a few days passed and things still weren't sitting right with me. The weird phone activities were still happening and she was still distant, so I asked her if something was going on. I asked her if what she told me was true, and if the two of them ever talked outside of work, or exchanged numbers or anything like that. She assured me that they didn't, and that he had a fiance and there was nothing going on. So, I started thinking it was me, and I stepped my game up. I was taking her out to movies and dinners, being extra nice, and doing anything I could think of to bridge whatever gap existed. Nothing was working. I pressed her some more, and she came out with, "We flirted at the hospital, and we touched hands once, but that was it." Weird. More time went by and more weird things happened. Eventually, I decided I needed to get to the bottom of it. I feel very guilty about this part because I invaded her privacy. But I logged on to her online phone bill, I checked out her usage, and there was an unfamiliar number that kept popping up, like a lot. Immediately, I knew who the number belonged to. So, I started looking a little deeper and started connecting the dates and times that she was texting this number. She was doing it all day at work and all night during her sleep shifts. During the time she was sitting right next to me on the couch while we were hanging out watching the movie, whatever else, while we were lying in bed together and after I had fallen asleep. So I texted the number, very calmly and politely I might add, and I confirmed that it was the person that I thought it was. So I informed him that I was the husband of the woman he had been conversing with, and I very politely asked for an explanation of what was going on between him and my wife. I got complete silence in return at that point, except for a screenshot of the conversation we were having that he meant to send to her to let her know that I knew. I looked a little further at her bill, and I noticed the amount of data she had used past her limit, $40 to be exact. So I looked at what had been draining it, and I find that it was all from sending and receiving pictures as well as videos. So at that point, she didn't know that I knew. She was on a sleep shift, so she wasn't home. So I texted her his number and nothing else. It was silent for a long time. Finally, she texted back, "How do you know his number?" I didn't say much back to her all night. Instead, I waited until she got home the next morning and I told her what I found. She said she couldn't tell me that they exchanged numbers and that they became friends because she thought I would be pissed. What about the data usage? We just sent each other selfies and pictures of the food we were cooking. $40 worth. I guess so. It seemed kind of narcissistic to me. Either way, I didn't buy it. I'm not stupid. So I told her we needed space while we figured this out. She stayed with her parents for a few days, and we talked about things. She told me that she stopped talking to the guy. It was never physical, and that she regretted everything. I told her to come home. I said, "Let's work on this, just you and me, and fix our family." She agreed and came home. But shit was still weird. She was still guarding her phone and being weird. I asked her again, "Are you sure that there wasn't ever anything physical? Are you sure you stopped talking to this person?" She assured me that there was nothing else that happened and that they no longer spoke. So I pressed her and convinced her to delete him from her contact list so she wouldn't have his number. He had an out-of-province number, so I figured she wouldn't remember it and change her number so that he didn't have hers. After some humming and hawing, she agreed, cool, a step forward, a baby step, but still a step in the right direction. But it still didn't feel right. I didn't say anything for a couple of days and just let her do her thing while casually observing. I remember one night she was having bad cramps and not feeling well. So I started massaging and rubbing her belly for her, and she moved my hands down a little lower, just below her belly button. Eventually, I had seen and felt enough. It was about 3 a.m. one night, and I couldn't sleep, and I thought, forget it. I'd already done it. I was going to look at her bill again and see what was up. Sure enough, there was the number. She had been texting him and sending pictures to him all day, almost right up until I crawled out of bed and checked the bill. So I woke her up and showed her that I knew it was still happening. She denied it all, even with the evidence right there in front of her. I was showing her the bill after all. That is the hub where everything that happens on her phone comes through, still denying it, saying the information was wrong. So I told her she needed to leave in the morning. That was it. It was supposed to be her and I working on the problem, him or me. Act right or get out. However you want to look at it. I was done and she needed to go. So she left that day and we've been separated since. Throughout our time apart, I've tried to talk about the situation and why she let it play out as she did. After 10 years, I figured I deserved a bit more respect than this, or at the very least an explanation for why this all went down this way. But I haven't gotten much response other than she wanted us both in her life, and if she told me about him, she would have to make a choice. Either lose him or lose me. The best I could figure is she fell in love, and that they had an arrangement going on where they would each leave their partner and end up together in a fairy tale romance. Fair enough. Relationships end and feelings change. I get it. If she wanted out, she could have just said it. So, later that day, I got a text from her best friend. "Oh my God, I just heard you kicked her out, and she told me what was happening. I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Well, no, I wasn't okay, but is what it is. "What did she tell you about this person? How much do you know?" So, I filled her in on what I knew. They had some sort of relationship going on. They were texting all the time and sending pictures and videos to each other. But that's about it. Mind you, that was enough for me, hopefully rightly so. No way, this is what's happening. Come to find out, she was telling me that she was going to work, that she worked shift work and picked up hours and extended shifts, when really she was driving half an hour away to meet up and have sex with this guy. So I confronted her with this newly discovered information. She denied it. Her best friend was just throwing fuel on the fire because she had a crush on me and wanted to steal me from her. So I say, hey friend, is there any chance that you might have a crush on me and are just trying to make sure my wife and I break up? Nope. She thought I was a great guy, but she was in a relationship and not interested on that level. So she sent me a screenshot of their conversation to prove it. Wow, it really was true. At this point, I'd like to add that I'm a stay-at-home dad. I've been there literally every second of my son's life for 2 years straight. So there I was sitting at home and taking care of our son, making sure he was fed and bathed, looking after our house, cleaning dishes, doing normal housework, looking after our dogs, and holding down the fort. Meanwhile, she was telling me that she was working, but was out getting laid. I was devastated about that, but mostly at the fact that my son and I would no longer be spending all of our time together. So I confronted her with this info and I showed her the screenshot. But of course, it wasn't real. So I showed her that it came from her number, it had her name on it, etc. Finally, she admitted it. A few days went by, and I suggested that we try marriage counseling together for the sake of our son and family. Shit happens. Let's try to get through this together. By that point, she had changed her attitude completely and said there was no point because she didn't want to be in the relationship. She had lost her feelings for me, but we tried it anyway, because why not? So we did our thing with a psychologist, talked about what was happening and how to move forward, and she said she was done. Fair enough, heartbreaking and devastating, especially since I didn't have much of a family growing up. So when I made my own, I really cherished and nourished it. But regardless, as I mentioned, relationships fail. I get it. It's almost March now, and she has recently started telling me how much she misses me. She wants to come home, she feels so bad, and everything will be so much better. She has been having really steamy dreams about me and starts calling me old pet names and whatnot, but I'm not really giving in to her. I'm not convinced it's for real. I feel like I'm her easy way out. She's tired of living with her parents and wants her old life back. I'm not trying to be cocky or brag about myself. Truth be told, I have extremely low self-esteem, especially right now. But everyone keeps telling me what a catch I am. I've been so good to her throughout our relationship. We always seemed so stable, and everyone looked up to us as having the model relationship, etc. And so I think she realized what she lost. It's also worth noting that the other guy is still with his fiancée, and they plan on getting married. I figure he didn't hold up his end of the deal and screwed her over just so he could have sex with her on the side. So now she's getting pissed and turning the tables on me. I'm the one who ended the relationship. I'm turning my back on our family. I'm breaking our vow of for better or worse, etc., etc. Am I? What do you think about the situation? And how should I move forward? Keeping in mind that we have a 2-year-old to think of, and that family is my #1 core value given that I didn't have much of one growing up. Am I obligated to try to work this out with her? Am I setting myself up for failure again? I won't lie. It is tempting to let her come home. Then I can have my son around all the time again, and I have my family back. The loneliness would also end because then I'm not alone. Obviously, I'm stuck, guys. I forgot to add the part where she told me she might be pregnant and that it might be his. It turns out she wasn't. But that's why I threw in the part about rubbing her belly. My bad. Do not take her back, OP. This is not a one-time mistake or a drunken fling. She lied to you, gaslighted you, and manipulated you. Protect yourself and your child and divorce her, and then minimize contact with her as much as you can. There is nothing to build on here. She will definitely cheat again. You have done all that a man can reasonably do to preserve his marriage and his vows. If only you had someone equally committed, but she isn't. Don't let her manipulate you into feeling bad. This is all her, not you. Best of luck to you, OP. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care, everyone.